Are you okay?
Yes, I just dug my hand on the way in.
Ouch. You didn't get in a fight.
No, I didn't.
Oh, yay.
No.
Ah. You were driving north. Yet
Yes.
again, when you,
No, well, yeah, I was driving on 6.5 hours drive today. Just another, well, that's not as far as you go, is it?
as me,
To get out from Massachusetts, another longer than 3 hours?
I mean, I have a daughter around Boston,
Yeah.
but that's about 3,
Yeah.
yeah. So you're saying 6.5 round trip?
Down.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
We-
I thought you meant one way, which
No,
was
no.
really gonna be overwhelmed by.
About 45 minutes west of Concord, New Hampshire.
So,
There's no straight shot over there.
I know, there's not much east-west connectivity, is there?
No,
Yeah.
no.
Okay,
Is this just us tonight?
well, it may be,
Okay with
because,
us.
Steve is traveling, Carla is, leaving for somewhere tonight or tomorrow. Sean just, emailed that has COVID.
Oh, no, Sean Rafter?
Yeah,
Oh,
and then, who else? And then Sherry, I already knew
wasn't coming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Aaron will be in shortly, so you can meet him if you haven't, our new economic development director.
I would love to.
So
meet him.
he's gonna be a big help to us for this, so.
Great.
So this may be a shorter meeting than.
That's okay, or longer. Who can say?
No, and well, December's always tough.
Yeah, I know, it's everyone's
So.
pulled in many directions this week and next.
So first I wanted to just check in and, it's okay if you've done a ton or you've done nothing, but I wanted to check in with whoever came, to see if you made any edits or progress on the chapters that we talked about.
I mean, we have, on historic preservation, I have not worked at all on natural resources, but only worked
Okay.
on historic and archaeological resources for now. And I must say, I don't think I've done anything since we were supposed to have our last meeting.
Okay.
But we have met probably 3 or 4 times.
Yeah, one way or another, yeah.
And part of it was just,
Okay.
sort of trying to get on the same page about what comprehensive planning is.
Yep.
And why we're doing it. And I think Peter still has some doubts about why we're doing it, but I'm such a Pollyanna that I always want to do it. And I've gone through the, old stuff, read through the old stuff. I've got, I've marked all my changes on my paper copy, because I haven't checked in a month, but I don't think the electronic copy yet is still in the shared folder of this chapter, this.
Oh, the historical one?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
I'll check.
I wrote, Emily and you about it, weeks and weeks ago. And I said, this is weird, why is this? And Ellie said, yeah, that is weird, and she tried to load it, but the formatting was all screwed up. So I don't know where to sort of make changes, and, which are bountiful. And Peter read through too, and he sort of shared his suggestions with me about where things were missing and what we should address.
Yeah, we don't have anything to
Make corrections on.
work from, or make corrections from, or add to, or delete from, or whatever, so I think we both feel we need a starting point,
Yeah,
so, and we haven't received that yet.
True, but so there's gonna be plenty to do once we know how we should make our changes.
okay, I will find that for you,
And I don't know, Sarah, if that's the way you want, I don't know if you wanted to like track changes in one of the original forms?
I think that makes the most sense, so then we have a record of what we're changing, like as we're going through, you can see what the original is.
I think so too. Now, Peter does not use Google Docs, but he has shared, his ideas with me, and he could, look I could make maybe a PDF from the Google Doc when I'm done with my marks.
Well, I got
Yeah.
a new computer, so I may be able to do that.
Oh.
I'm sure your wife can tell you how to do it, but whether she wants to is another question. Yeah, so I mean, that might be good that we could do that. So we, yeah, and you know, there's still a lot to do, but I found tons of good info,
Okay, that's awesome.
about it. I know are sort of always thinking, when will this be ready to, you know, present to the public? I can't imagine that we'll be ready till like February or March or something like that.
That's fine, because I think, we can get moving on the survey, and I would love to get that out in maybe late January.
Yeah, so,
Because that can still be going out while we're making
Sure.
edits, because, I mean, we can't fully finish any of the chapters until we have the public input, so
yeah.
that's fine if it's gonna take a little longer than we can.
Yeah, I mean, that's sort of how I feel too. I know it must be very frustrating for you because you wanna keep moving this along, but
No, but I also get it, I mean, we also all have lives too. It's
Yeah.
not like this is our job.
that's, yeah, no,
Full time,
well,
so.
yeah, true, but I do think, you know, it's worth, I think it's worth, creating a draft document and having
Okay.
someone review it, you, Emily, Peter, I mean, definitely Peter, but, you
Yep.
know,
Well, and Aaron's gonna be able
and
to
Aaron,
do that as well.
yeah.
And there were several chapters that he, has done previously in other towns, so he's very familiar
Yeah,
with the process, and will actually be able to help write.
great.
So that would be awesome.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So, let's see, I'm trying to think if there's any other questions I had for you about this. Oh, well, you have, see, one thing that's kind of interesting, there's this intersection of everything that's going on about St. Philip's with our chapter. And it's very much on Peter's mind, you know, like, how can you approach the comp plan with the illumination? I mean, it's sort of laid bare the fact that nothing is protected in the village. And so I was talking to Peter Sumner and I was saying, well, we can ask Sarah, could we ever have a quick meeting with you about how villagers might approach the selectmen or
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Well,
about protection for the village?
Yeah,
I was here last night for the planning board,
right.
and I thought that there was some protection for the village through the national, the fact that it had been designated
Historic district.
and historic district by federal. And I learned last night that that was not the case. It's not protected at all unless the community
Does something.
Yeah.
does something,
Yeah,
which it never has. So, and I'm so bad on names. Who was
Don't worry.
the guy who was the head of the planning committee?
Carl
Carl
Olson.
Olson.
Carlos, yeah. I talked to him afterwards, and I said, just, I'll make sure I understand this. And he said, yeah, he said, there is absolutely no protection at all because there's no historic district. And if somebody wants to put a replica of the Taj Mahal down there, they can do that as long as it meets the existing town regulations, because there's nothing that says there's a historic district and certain things can't be done in that district. So obviously we need to, that's our concern, and
Yeah,
with what's going on with the church right now, all of that kind of, you know, is a little more, I would say urgent than it might have been in the past. Because nobody's seen their plan except, you know, a few secret people, I guess.
well, there isn't one yet.
Well, right, but I mean, they have an architect who's gonna show us drawings tomorrow, and they have this and that, and, but anyway. I guess this is sort of corrupt,
Hello.
Come on in.
hey,
We're a rather small group tonight.
Okay, the really important people.
yeah.
So, Peter and Ann, this is Erin.
Hi, Aaron.
Hi.
Nice to meet you.
I can say last month now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
We've been here almost a month.
Actually,
Is
a
this
month
the
today,
13th?
yeah, the 13th, right?
Great. Really glad you're here.
30 days.
We are working on the historic and archaeological resources chapter of the comprehensive plan.
Oh, okay.
Well, we did have the historic preservation
You
committee
okay?
that,
You need help or something?
I'm sorry?
You okay? You need
Oh,
help
yeah,
for safety or
no, I
something?
nicked my hand coming in the door, that's
Oh,
all.
okay.
I may sue, but.
Yeah. He was
Yeah.
feeling really
Well,
frustrated.
we can probably find you a band.
Susan, he's just kidding. We are recording it, Susan, this
Oh, you are?
yes.
Oh, sorry. Yes, I was just kidding.
We had the historic preservation committee, which kind of,
Did happen.
yeah, and then the town got rid of it.
Right.
And
And
that,
by getting rid of the committee, they got rid of any
the ordinance.
ordinance.
Mhm.
So that there is no zoning and ordinance at all for.
Related to
related to
historical.
this.
Yeah.
So I think, but in the framework of the comprehensive plan, what we were sort of wondering about this afternoon, and I was encouraging Peter to ask you about it, is just, if there's, I love the framework of the comprehensive plan. Peter is feeling the urgency. I mean, he's sort of realizing, my gosh, this could take years. And this doesn't mandate ordinances, it makes recommendations. And is there a faster way to bring this to the selectmen and the planning board, the need for some more oversight in that district?
Well, so that's
How
a
would that work?
multi-pronged question, I
How
would
would
say.
that work? Is there a pathway to do that?
So it kind of depends on what you wanted to do. So like, for example, one option would be if you had an idea for some sort of ordinance, whether it be a very comprehensive one or a very specific thing, like say you didn't want one type of thing in the district, you could certainly propose that to the selectmen, and then if we thought it was something that made sense, we'd send it to the ordinance review committee, who would then draft something, and then it would go through the whole process, which would include public hearings and all that.
So the selectmen would be the body to which a group might bring an idea for the need for an ordinance. Okay.
Occasionally, people will go to the ordinance review committee. They don't usually have a specific public comment time, but they also tend not to have big crowds either, so sometimes people have proposed them in that too.
I mean, theoretically, you can go to any town staff member or any of the committees, and they could then, hear your comments, and then they could bring it forth to the appropriate people, you know what I mean? But ultimately, it's the select board that will make.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to get clear, that, so the ultimate people are the select board to decide whether or not the assignment is given, create an ordinance to do this.
Yeah, so, yeah, in terms of an ordinance, typically the select board asks the ORC to create something. They give some sort of direction, and then it comes back up through.
You want me to talk about what I was talking with you about this afternoon?
Whatever you want.
Okay. It seems to me, given both the national issues and the specific issues in Wisconsin right now, that we need to do something as quickly as we can, but at the same time, if we try to do something like the 34-page proposal that went in 2017, that's dead in the water before we even start. So, in kicking this around and talking this afternoon, after kicking around from last night and then this afternoon, it seemed to me that if we could propose an ordinance for the creation of an historic district and a limited committee that would oversee that ordinance, but not have the ordinance so detailed that you've got to, if you're gonna put a piece of 3/4 inch plywood on here, it's gotta be a few, you know, it's gotta be,
Yeah.
whatever. So it seemed to me that if we could propose something that was general, for example, if we had a committee, if we had call it a committee, what would you call it? That was composed of a member of the ordinance review committee, a member of the planning committee, a member of the select board, and now, the economic development committee, and have that as just create a group that would oversee the historic district, and then have a group of concerned citizens or educated citizens, or whatever you like to call them, that are aware of what the historic district brings to the town, and also what the historic buildings are, and just have a small group like that, and propose that through the ordinance review, through you guys, to say, essentially what we want to do is to create a small group that would be able to oversee the activities of the historic district without going through all of the details, which derailed the thing last time.
So what, for example, would this group decide about?
If someone in the historic district,
We should have to establish
would have
first
to,
that-
well, yeah, using the overlay maps from last time, let's say, and calling that the historic district, or I would think that's the safest way to do it, would be to use the existing maps. And your question, what would they do? Suppose, well, for example, last night, in one of the changes, to bring things in accordance with the state regulations, I think one of the things was if there's an area of 144 square feet free, then anybody can put up solar panels anywhere they want. So when I was talking to Carl afterwards, he said, yeah, that's absolutely true. So I said, somebody could, right out here in their yard, put up solar panels. And they could
Yeah.
at this point. So there's a case where if somebody proposed that through the ordinance or the building inspector, and said, this is what I want to do, he would say, okay, let me check to see how that flies with the people who are on the historic district committee. And if it doesn't fly, yes.
So here's the deal though, that you can't just make it open-ended. In other words, the historic committee can't just say, you know, like, for example, like, there's a permit for solar panels, and then they can't just like place their opinion in. There's gotta be a standard that they have to follow. So in other words,
Right.
If there's gotta be, have you seen this thing that they did the last time?
no, I'd like to read it, but what I'm saying is, I mean, I'm actually really supportive of this, but I also wanna be employed too, so I'd like,
No, I understand your
Yeah,
point,
it's
it's so very open-ended.
okay, no, but what I'm saying is that they have to have this, you have to be careful in the sense that you have to have a standard, so it's okay to say that in the historic district that you just say that you don't want solar panels. But you can't just say, okay, Sally is not gonna have solar panels because, you know what I mean, like, when she applies. You see what I'm saying?
No, I understand that, and I kicked this around this afternoon with Ann, and I believe that anytime we come up with a proposal that has restrictions on it, and you have to do this, you have to do this, you have to do this, it's not gonna, it's gonna get voted down. So I think the only way to get something started is to have something very general, which might get obscured in the 143 other ordinances that come up, you know, on that board.
I mean, maybe there's another way to structure what you're talking about. But right now, I think, just to play sort of devil's advocate, that suggestion would also get immediately voted down because it gives the impression of people just having an opinion about whether something should be or not, rather than like what Aaron's saying, they actually have something to go by.
And one thing, one word
It's
you haven't
illegal to
used
have
that
it way
you were
open-ended.
using with me this afternoon, you said you were thinking about, so it might be an advisory group too. And that might not require an ordinance, I don't know.
So I guess I should just,
Fine word.
because we are, I'm fine talking a bit about this, because I know we don't have everybody here and whatever, but if this is something you want to do, we should talk more at not a comprehensive plan meeting about that. And then if it was something that you wanted to propose to the select board, then you could put something together. But,
Could I just,
but also keep in mind, sorry, just one more thing, also keep in mind that any ordinance change also takes time.
The public hearings and.
Yeah.
So there would be it would be a pretty slow process.
Yes,
And we can make, if we decide we want to make that sort of recommendation in our chapter, eventually when there's gonna be like a goals section and
Yeah.
recommendations, that we can definitely do that. But I understand you were looking, we're just sort of daydreaming about what might be faster.
yeah, I feel you're in a better position than I am to know that, but, I just feel that any ordinance that says you must do this isn't, or you can't do this, isn't gonna fly right now.
I agree, because I think people would view it very much as what we got rid of.
So I think, it's so much depends, any change, in theory, that's gonna be made in an historic district is gonna go first to the code enforcement officer, building inspector. Can I do this?
Yeah.
Well, the guy who was two before, he had the same name,
Bruce.
Bruce. I said, Bruce, I would like to take this 1950s garage door off and put the front of the building back the way it was in the 18th century. He said, as long as it looks old. He said, that's fine. He said, nobody cares about historic stuff here. I said, well, so.
I wouldn't say that's
Somebody
exactly true.
As far as, yeah, that, I agree, but as far as he's concerned, he was concerned. Anybody could do pretty much anything they wanted in that area because he didn't think anybody cared about the historic aspects of it. Therefore, he wasn't holding that up as we gotta be within this framework. So what I think that this has to start with a building inspector who has some sense of how important the historic district is to the town. Not historic, well, the downtown
There
district
is
of town. So anyway,
The
that's,
one good thing that I can see out of this is that if we get to survey questions tonight, I mean, we could try to get to what you really wanna know, which is how much do townspeople care about the historic district? How important is that to them? And if the
Yeah.
survey comes back that they care a lot, that will give
yes,
more weight to efforts to try to protect
right,
the asset.
right.
Sorry, I cut you off, Aaron.
oh, it's a problem. If you guys wanna meet, work on this, I'd be happy to work with you on this. Just give me a call and we'll meet.
Sure.
The one thing that I sort of made me jump out of my chair a little bit was when you mentioned advisory committee. I think in this climate, when you're talking about advisory, I mean, we do a lot of advisory committees, but in knowing the past history of this, I think it would be wrong for you to go down that path. It really would, because it would inflame things. I think you would give the wrong impression to people. Because if you're just going before like the planning board or something to advise them on a permit or something like that, it doesn't make them, it's not like a regulatory type thing,
Yeah.
but it's just an advisory type thing. I think that you're just gonna be antagonistic all the time. And I think that it's something that you just don't wanna go down that path. I think maybe the first step is is to just work really hard. I mean, do we have a historical community in town?
Oh,
So
there's a county.
we had a historical preservation committee
No,
that
no.
was formed as,
Well, that's like a regulatory thing, but do we have an actual historical society?
not specifically for Wiscasset, we have the Lincoln County.
Which is a
Historical.
really great organization.
All right, well, what I'm suggesting is maybe first is to get like a Wiscasset Historical Society, and what that mean, what I'm trying to get at is the first step is to try and make a bridge, and, you know, from the actual education of the, you know, from the store, showing people the historic assets and educating them on them and why they're important before we go down the path of trying to preserve them. So that, you know, when people start to see how important they are, and they actually be able to go in and touch them and feel them and start to really, I mean, I think people have done a wonderful job. We had that museum in the streets.
Yeah,
But I
that's
think
pretty
you just
amazing.
need, I think somebody needs to kind of, you know,
in this,
promote
in this
that.
first,
again. And-
proposal, they list, I think, 20 different buildings in town, that 10 of which are on the National Register, and another 10 or 12 that could be on the National Register. So they do address, they did in this proposal address exactly the point that you're making. So that there was, the emphasis was on the historic nature of the district. And that, were you here when that blew up?
I think that was blowing up around the time I came back.
Yeah.
Good timing.
But that, the historic, what did they call themselves?
Preservation Commission.
Commission, or I
Yeah.
think it might have been a commission. I know there was an ad hoc historic preservation commission that I was on right after the last comp plan for a while, that also, you know, just
Yeah.
fell apart.
Yeah.
But I think Aaron is making a really important point, which is we who care about the historic village, and I would love to hear an economic development specialist way of qualifying the value of the historic culture in this town to the economy. But we who care have to build support and appreciation and enthusiasm for that, because really, you're right, an ordinance will never pass unless there are enough people who say, we really care about this and we're willing to commit to some kind of preservation standards.
Yeah.
So I think that's an interesting way to look at it, because we do have multiple active organizations that very much care about historical preservation and our historical societies, so that might be a good way to.
So one of the things that I've always found in my experiences in previous life as a town manager is that, people aren't stupid. And when you try and educate them, you know, rather than just try to, I mean, you know, as a town manager, you know, I've done things the right way and the wrong way. You know, I've tried to, you know, jam an ordinance through, you know, and then I wonder why it fails. And then I do a concerted effort to educate people about that ordinance, and then it gets approved. So I think the thing is, if you explain to people and spend a lot of time, you know, going, you know, just, you know, showing them why this is important. Do you see what I'm saying? What I mean by this, you could do it just in like 1 year. But I think what you need to do is lay the groundwork. Somebody needs to lay the groundwork. So this might be like a multi-year thing. For this type of thing. You know, you might want to start form like a little committee first before you actually get to the big.
Big time.
Yeah, so you might actually have a little committee that kind of starts the museum in the street thing. I mean, I don't know if that's active.
Yes, it is.
Okay. Okay, but maybe start giving tours or something, you know, start educating people about these historic assets, and that's all.
Yeah, and I think Ann said earlier is, you know, both the survey, but also once we start having public workshops related to each of the chapters, we can ask more specific questions about what's important to you, is this specific thing important to you, what would you like to see, what protections would you want, that kind of thing, and that's what I'm hoping with all of these will be illuminating for us in terms of what the majority of the town wants.
I think we get a speaker too, right?
A speaker. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I know people at the Maine Preservation and, the Historic Preservation Commission.
Yeah, that would be amazing, and this town has had an unbelievable tradition of preservation without regulation for decades, you know, long before I came on the scene, of people who really, really cared and worked very hard to, you know, preserve the village as it is. But there has been kind of a lapse in awareness maybe, or that generation kind of died off, and so it is the right time for
I think the people in the
research.
village are very concerned about maintaining the historic character of the town. And, I don't know of anybody who, I was going through some of the changes that have occurred in the last 6 years. And what I came up with for different buildings or whatever, is that thank goodness the people who bought the buildings bought them because they were historic
yeah.
buildings
Yeah,
and wanted to be part of the historic district. So when they renovated or whatever they did, they did things accordingly. So I don't think that part would be much of an issue, but the towns, the village is such a small part of the town that I think that's where we run into problems. So one of my questions, I didn't know you were gonna be here, but I'm glad you are. One of the questions on the survey from the state is to establish, if we can, the economic value of the downtown to Wiscasset. In a general sense, when I moved here 6 years ago, there were 14 antique shops that had American furniture in them. It's 2 now, that's all. For one reason or another, they've all left. But people came to Wiscasset and have been coming to Wiscasset 50 years because it was an antique center, like Hell was. But it's not anymore. And what's drawing people to the downtown now is Reds and Rock Paper Scissors. They're the 2 businesses in town that are really, really doing well. So somehow, if we could get some statistics to show the townspeople that the downtown is a viable part of keeping their tax rate down, or, you know, parting with their tax rate, that would be extremely helpful.
yeah.
Because if
I had
you,
that same thought this
Yeah.
afternoon, but is there a way to do that? I mean, can you
So it's
figure
interesting
out-
enough, I took a call the other day from just, you know, one of these cold sales calls. And, there's a company that somehow traces your cell phones
Yikes.
and they collect their data, okay? And they track you through going through like a geographic area. And they will tell you certain demographic information about you going, like, so for example, and I have to learn more about it because I have a meeting tomorrow with this company. But they, you know, big companies use it to determine, help them like locate like their, like Wendy's or, you know,
They're
wherever.
marking where people are going the
Yeah,
most.
yeah, yeah. So anyways, and what, like who's going there, you know, like what age group, you know, all that kind of
What
stuff.
income level and so
Yeah,
they can get it
exactly.
down to that? Wow.
Yeah.
So creepy.
That
Yeah, it is creepy.
that is a little scary,
Yeah.
but that's interesting. You're saying that could be a useful tidbit of
Yeah,
information.
the
and
city
this
of Auburn, I guess,
stuff.
is using it, this program. Yeah, so.
Well, I'm so dumb about money, but maybe everybody knows the answer to this, but Can you figure out, like, can you quantify what part of the tax base the village is responsible for? Just based on the number of people who live there, the number of businesses, or like, can you say,
By responsible for, do you mean?
like, what percentage of the total tax revenue coming into the town
Is from the people.
located in that district?
Yeah, I mean, you could add it up.
That would be. that
I
would
could
be
probably
kind of
talk to the assessor about that, like. I think he's sure he can do something with that.
Well, what I
But you
think is,
you still want to
Yeah.
find out what's driving the people here.
yeah, I mean, that's a great question, and I think the historic character is part of it, but I'm just thinking, the people who live outside of the village, in the rural areas, for them to understand that they may not love the village or think of it as that important, but if it's helping keep their taxes down, then it's important for them to protect it, you know?
So I do think some of these things would be helpful to have in our economy chapter, or probably others as well. So that would be good if we could
Yeah, I mean, I'd like
think
to
about how we
Yeah.
can include some of that.
I'd like
If
to
you
include it in
get
this
somebody tell
chapter.
me what you think the downtown is, where it ends. and stuff.
Okay, yes.
Yeah, even with the boundaries of it.
Yeah, we can, that can definitely be done, because we've got, I think there's downtown District 1 and downtown District
Yeah.
2 for planning board and everything, so I think we can do that.
But we, just as an aside, others, we seem to be in the process of creating a food district in the downtown. Reds across the street, up Water Street. And I think that's a great thing, to try to get more restaurants, more wine bars, more.
Yeah.
Everything that's opening up is coming back as a restaurant.
That's interesting, that
So,
could be an economic
yeah,
section of
That's what I
survey
can,
as well.
I think if we pushed on the fact that there is a developing food scene in Wisconsin, that would get more people up. And I think that's actually happening. When a store goes out,
Never thought of
it's
it that way.
Yep,
somebody selling oysters that's coming in, so.
right.
But Sarah, could I just bring up one other thing
Yeah.
that I might be a bomb, but,
That's okay.
one of the things that I've been thinking about recommending to everybody is creating sort of a main downtown center. Have you heard of them?
The program,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. So, I think the Creative Alliance is sort of has been acting as sort of an umbrella organization for the whole town, for a lot of different organizations, but I was thinking maybe that could become sort of our downtown organization, or, I don't know, I mean, forget about that, but I think that the downtown organization would help out with all the marketing and advertising and so forth of the village center. It has no regulatory role, but it would advocate for the small businesses and so forth. And then it would also help with the businesses. They can get technical assistance from like the state and so forth, and funding from the state. And so it's a good program. And it would, I think the downtown businesses would benefit a lot from it.
Is that different than the federal Main Street program?
It's the same program
It's
essentially.
the same program.
yeah.
Okay, but it's,
There is
through the
there's a federal certified local government, which is a historic preservation program type thing.
Yeah.
And that's also another thing that you might want to look at.
I think we looked at that, and we don't qualify for that because we don't have
Yeah,
a historic district and we don't have a historic committee,
yeah.
so we didn't qualify for that.
but there is a lot of,
But the one I'm getting at is you might start out with this downtown program,
yeah,
and that might be the way of organizing as a downtown in the historic district. And then, they can lead the charge on the historic district.
yeah, and there are a lot of overlapping you know, a lot has been done in the village in terms of decoration and art walks and,
Yeah.
and the waterfront committee. I mean, there are a lot of overlapping efforts that could build support for what you're talking about, Peter. I think
Yeah.
it's just a kind of a coordination event.
Pull them together and have.
Yeah.
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 All right, sorry.
No, it's fine,
We're-
no, it's all super important. It's just, these comprehensive plans, you know, they're kind of monsters, so.
I know.
Yeah, and I know, I don't want to drag this on, but using the
Optional
the
checklists.
checklist from the state.
Yeah.
You know, are historic patterns of settlement still evident in the community? What protective measures currently exist for historic and archaeological resources? Are they effective? The site plan and subdivision regulations require, it's no. I mean,
Well, that'll make your section shorter.
True.
that's true. It's true.
I actually,
So-
yeah, anyway, go ahead.
I will find the electronic copy for you.
Oh, that would be
But
great, Sarah.
then you can, well, and I can even PDF it for you if you want, so then, Peter, you
Yeah.
can print it out if you want to.
Okay.
Because, you know,
Well,
even if,
Peter's actually used a paper copy of that, of the
Okay.
chapter.
okay, great,
And I have been too.
okay,
So what I need to do
just put
is
it in.
transfer it all,
Yeah.
and it's a lot, there are a lot of changes. So
Yeah,
it's gonna take a while, but yeah, there's no point in doing it.
so I think if this sounds okay, I'll get you that, you can start putting some of your changes in there. You know, some of these things that are answers that are no, we don't have this, we don't have that, that's just the way it is at the moment, so. May not be the way we end up wanting it, but that's what we have to put in for now, 'cause that is the current state of affairs.
Right.
Okay.
And then let's come up with what are the questions we wanna ask the community to get at? What do they care about? What protections would they want if they want them?
And I'm struggling so much with the survey questions. I was looking at, you know, the last attempt of the survey and then the one before that. And I sort of realized that we need to kind of define what are we really trying to get at the survey. The last survey was quite heavily toward demographics. The one before that was sort of like a, preference survey, and I don't know whether, I always kind of think of these comp plan surveys as a way to take the temperature of the town about what they really care for.
Yeah,
And I'm just kind of struggling with what the questions are, how they should be structured to get at people's attitudes.
well, and I don't know if Erin, if you would agree with this. I'm sort of viewing the survey as just one piece of the public feedback
Yeah,
in terms of, this doesn't have to have every single little question.
yeah.
Cause we'll go more in depth in terms of education or historic preservation or whatever.
Where do these get handed out?
So the last time we did it, there was an online version that we sent out in all of our online things. And then there were also paper copies here and over at the community center, and we could put them other places too. So you can do either one, paper or online.
So the paperwork will be available
Yeah,
pretty much anywhere.
And then we basically just log them in, they're anonymous, so we just log them into the digital one. So then it's all in the same place.
yeah, and that's quite a task probably to gather and collate all that feedback.
Yeah, oh, it's not bad. So last time we had somewhere between 200 and 300 responses, and I think we maybe had a dozen paper,
Yeah,
so.
so it wouldn't be, so the outliers are just the
I
paper
mean-
ones, most of the information you would
I
expect
would
to come
say-
in digitally.
I would say if we got 100, that I would be thrilled with that
Yeah,
amount of work to put it in.
yeah,
So. Yeah, and part of this with the survey is the way, as you all know, the way you ask questions matters.
yeah,
both in terms of it can often point people in a certain direction, or it can also not really answer the question. The answer isn't meaningful, in other words. So some of the ones that have, like, for example, number 12 has how important are each of these amenities to your choice to live in Wiscasset, and the gauges are very important, somewhat important, not very important, not applicable. Does that really capture? So
That's too many,
too many options.
yeah.
Too many, so you think it's too many, Erin?
Well, I think some of them are kind of redundant too.
Yeah.
Yeah, there definitely are. I'm wondering whether we should, you know, in rereading this sort of circle of ones we think are important to our chapter, that as a starting point, I mean.
This is the one that's going out.
No,
this
this
is
went
the
out
old one.
previously,
This
2
is the
years
old
ago.
All right, okay.
Yeah, and it was a little bit unwieldy, but maybe we can't come up with anything less unwieldy. But what our responsibility is to make sure that the questions we think are important to our chapter
All right.
are in here.
Yeah.
Yeah, and as Sarah has pointed out, they can't be comprehensive, because that would be a whole long survey in itself, but probably there'll be like 5 questions about historic and archaeological resources, or.
Yeah, or something
This is
like.
kind of funny.
Yeah.
Public Works, the value, I guess you're trying to figure out the value of the service. When you have
Yeah.
road signs, like,
I know.
Yeah, I don't know why we need to know. I would hope most people value road signs, but I don't know why that's relevant to a comprehensive plan.
I mean, I think you could just have a generic one, just like Public Works, maybe.
Yeah, because most of these, we also had a narrative option, so if people wanted to write in something else,
True.
which sometimes is a little unwieldy, but that's something we can certainly put together in terms of how many times X thing was listed. That kind of thing. We also, I was talking to Aaron, just bringing him up to speed on what we've got so far. And I thought he had a great suggestion about thinking about what are some of the more specific things that we might wanna get at in terms of like, what would you wanna do with Mason Station, or what would you like that, to see that turned into, or that, like, very relevant questions, for lack of a better word, like right now.
And do you imagine that being open-ended, or would you put like,
No,
you know,
I think-
housing, arts center,
I think we'd
business
have to-
development,
I
or,
think we have to come up with some,
so give them
Yeah,
some
some
menu
parameter.
of choices.
maybe also allow them to.
Other,
Yeah,
yeah, they could brainstorm their own question for that.
And like,
Yeah, that's.
I'm kind of thinking, particularly with so much going on with the schools right now,
Yeah.
I'm not sure how helpful it is to have the middle high school and the elementary school listed in here as, please indicate what you think the value of each service or department is to the town. Instead, could we ask more about what would you like education to look like in Wiscasset? Like, let's actually get at the question.
I think
Yeah, I
that's a
agree.
good idea. I mean, I think that gets more to the heart of how people are feeling about education here.
And the elephant in the room is, do we close the school and go join somebody else, or do we bring in more
Yeah.
special needs kids from other towns and throw a budget out of whack again, or?
Yeah, so that's what I'm kind of thinking with some of these like laundry lists of things, other sort of more, I guess frankly, meaningful questions we can ask to get at.
Mhm.
I guess we would have to be, I guess the point of it is, I think, too, is if we wanna be a little bit provocative, we might not like the answer, but,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, you know, that's what the point of this is, to actually learn something.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and sometimes the provocative questions will, you know, get people engaged.
Yeah.
And they'll say, I'm gonna go to that public hearing because I feel really strongly about this, which is good too.
Yeah.
I know in the much, not the first, but the second comp plan survey, it was actually divided up into like natural resources, historic preservation.
When was that one?
This one was, it was probably, well, 2004.
Oh, okay.
So, and there was one even before that, which I couldn't put my hand on, but I know I have it. It was kind of interesting to compare the different ones and kind of see how you can kind of tell, oh, things have changed, you know?
Do you have any idea what kind of response there was to the
Yeah, I'm
previous ones?
sure I have all that.
That would be
To
interesting
the
to
2004
know.
one?
Yeah, that would be
Yeah.
interesting to know what,
I know that I have at least, yeah, I'm sure I have a photograph of the results. Yeah, that, it might be fun to circulate that when we have a bigger committee group, so we could sort of look at it and say, oh, that's, you know, that's an issue we should attack, or it's
well,
interesting people felt that way then, think it's different now, and.
and I'm thinking particularly for the numbers aspect, if, 600 people filled it out last time, that could be a point of motivation to get people to say,
True.
hey, 600 of you participated last time.
Yeah, I
Let's-
doubt, I don't think it was that.
I know, it's wishful thinking.
Dream on, Sarah.
I know.
But I
But-
know there was a significant number though. So-
Yeah.
So
I think that would be interesting if you wouldn't
Okay.
mind
I could,
looking around.
do you
for
want
that.
me to like bring that to the next meeting or
Sure.
share it online or?
Either's fine.
Okay.
I think it'd be interesting.
So Sarah, like one of the things, or I showed you that survey,
Hmm,
they had a little incentive if you filled it online.
oh,
You know, if you wanted to have a budget, but maybe we can work out something with a local business owner or something. Or what they do is I think you get like $5 off like a parking right program.
You mean if you filled it out?
Yeah,
Ooh.
well, and we do have a budget.
Yeah.
For the
So-
conference.
so anyways, I mean, maybe, you know, that's how we get people to fill out this, like,
Yeah.
is to come up with like a little thing.
Oh, that's.
Yeah,
that's
some sort of benefit.
interesting.
Go offline for a minute.
No,
Wait till the end. Wait till the end. Okay. Well, all right, this
She's
is
got
part
all
of the
mine,
survey.
yeah, rules.
This
Yeah.
is part of the survey. There are a number of people in town who are only here seasonally,
yes,
as you know, particularly in the downtown. There are at least a dozen empty houses right now where people have already gone. I would like to find some way to reach those people because they are all in the downtown and would be very much concerned about what was going on, but they happen to have gone back to their house and wherever, where it's warm. So
yeah.
I don't know how you reach those people, but
Well, actually, a lot of them are on social media, so I mean, we put it like out on Facebook,
Yeah,
like on the town's Facebook
Yeah.
page and that kind of thing.
okay.
Cause that is a key question that I think we should definitely keep, that includes whether you're saying if you're a full-time resident or if you just own a home
Yeah.
and you're here less than
And
however.
that applies obviously to the stores downtown, which I'll have
Yeah.
them closed
Mhm.
for the winter as well.
You could also do some informal networking down there, because I bet a lot of people do have each other's email addresses.
Well, that was my question to you was, in Wayne, they had, a couple organizations had, we're a wildly seasonal town. And, but there's two main organizations in town that had these very robust email lists. And we used to reach out to them as a town. The town actually developed their own now, but, was the church, main church and the library. And, they wouldn't give them, they wouldn't allow us access to it, but
But they'll send out,
yeah. And so maybe, I mean, I don't know the people in town yet, but,
Yeah,
you know.
those are
it-
two great
Yeah.
sources right there,
it-
churches and the
maybe,
library.
maybe those groups, you know, the seasonal people, you know,
Yeah.
would be on that list.
That's a great
between
idea.
those and the community center and the Creative Alliance and all kinds, yeah. No, that definitely should be part of the outreach
Yeah.
strategy. I think the other piece I want us to be thinking about, particularly in terms of promotion to get folks to fill this out, is as much as the downtown is extremely important, I have always been frustrated by the idea that there are some people who think that that's the only thing that's cared about.
Right.
Because to your point, Peter, the majority of people are not actually in the downtown in terms of population wise. And I think it's really important that we get as many people as we can across the entire town to fill this out.
Mm,
What would they like to see, not just
too.
downtown, but all the way out to the town lines?
Yeah, absolutely.
The
So,
majority of people who don't live in the downtown, don't shop in the downtown.
Right.
And then they go south and they go north, so it's sort of an issue there. You
But
just
there
travel
are,
through.
yeah, but there are a lot of people in the rural areas who do, go get coffee or treats or go to Jody's and have breakfast. Or I mean, there are people out there, and I think it's really important to hear their
Yeah,
voices too.
but I think,
Yeah.
and this could be a controversial thing to say, but I don't think every town has to have every single thing.
No, right.
Because we're a small town, we're not 30,000-40,000 or larger. And that's okay if there are some things, I mean, it's sort of competitive advantage, right? It's like, sometimes other towns are good at things and
That's a
sometimes
good
we're better at things. And it might be better to focus on the things that we're good at and that we want as a town. If there's something that's already been taken care of, quote unquote, by another,
20 minutes away or something.
yeah, or even the
Yeah.
next town over.
Right.
But I think that's where these things, meaning surveys and other workshops that we do are extremely important, because we've gotta get down to that,
Yeah,
so,
good point. That's a very good point.
well. So we've got a lot here, I think this has been a very productive discussion.
I really
think,
appreciate it.
Peter, and I would definitely encourage you to meet with Aaron to talk further with him about that, and, I'm happy to talk with you as well. But I'll get you your chapter, and then maybe if you wanna go through this
Yeah.
paper copy, and feel free to email me. What I was thinking is I'm gonna go through and maybe work with Erin and try to put together some sort of draft. And then if people wanna send me comments of things you'd like to see in it, and then just so we have something more,
Concrete to
Yes.
start with.
yeah,
I
and
think
then
that's a
most people
great
should be
idea.
back in January, and then we can go question by question and
Yeah.
figure out.
And I guess I was sort of being paralyzed by wanting to create the perfect survey questions, but I think it's more important right now probably to just get some down, whether they're
Yep.
the existing ones or other ones. And then together as a group, we can knock around whether they seem to be aiming to get the information we really most want.
Yeah, and I think thinking about, particularly with these laundry list ones, what's the overarching question we're trying to get at?
Yeah,
Cause if we can get that initial answer, then we'll have much more to go on in terms of what are the next step down questions we should be asking in public workshops and that kind of thing.
yeah. Good point, okay.
Okay, so does that sound like a plan?
So we can
So
share
we could go,
with each other, and Sarah, if you have any survey
I
questions
just
you
had a
think are
question about it,
important.
because I was just looking at
we can do
this
that, and I'll-
chapter.
Yeah. Which one?
Municipal finances,
Oh.
and, it seems like it's missing a lot. Just going over really,
Is this the
valuation.
2008 one?
Which
it might be-
chapter is it?
Municipal finances,
Municipal finances?
Oh, gosh, that's way over my head.
it makes no mention of debt, debt service, or the bond debt or anything like that.
Is
But
it-
anyways, it's just talking about exempt properties, open space and things like that, personal property, things like that. But,
Okay, so I'm sure we'll have a lot more to add.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you'd like to take a crack at that one.
yeah, I can, but my question really was, what towns are you, just to be consistent with other chapters, are you all looking at? As I see right here, it says Alma, Damascus, Dresden, Edgecombe, Newcastle, Westport, Woolwich, and Lincoln County. Obviously Lincoln County.
Yeah.
Are we gonna do all the neighboring towns? But Damascus isn't, but I guess, it's
Are you talking about for our chapter or? in-
Or all the
All,
chapters?
any that have
For
that.
this chapter, I cast a really wide net, like I think, what towns are the size of ours around here that seem to be doing it well? And I've been looking at them, and I've looked at Gardner, and then I look at bigger towns like Bath and Brunswick, you know, who I know have well-developed, like, historic preservation initiatives. So I've been bouncing around, sometimes going to out-of-state towns, sometimes going to cities, and then going to little towns. But if you wanna advise me toward any particular rank or size or anything, I'm happy to do it.
I mean, I think you should try and stay,
Consistent.
consistent.
Across chapters.
Yeah, try to be, I mean, obviously. In some cases, like what you're trying to do with the historical preservation ordinance thing.
Yeah.
You might not find towns that don't have, that cohort group that don't have it. But I think that's what you tell people, you just say that there's no communities, on our cohort group that do not have that.
But how do you establish a cohort group? Is that usually by size
Well, I think
or
that's,
region
well, I
or?
mean, I think that's what we're trying to decide now.
Okay.
Yeah, I would have to look to see on the, population chapter. But I think it's based on region, not necessarily size.
Okay,
Yeah, I mean, I think all they did here, to be honest,
As
it was
is
just,
that.
yeah, I think they just did every town that touched Wiscasset, except for Generoscata. I mean, that's what it looks like.
the only thing I would say, Aaron, is, I always hope to be somewhat aspirational in the comprehensive plan too, and, occasionally there'll be a subject that comes up that I can think of a town elsewhere that I've noticed is doing this really well, so it's really interesting to look at their comp plan or their ordinances for that specific thing. But I see what you're saying, if we're gonna look at like comp plans, we should probably stay consistent through the chapters, maybe.
I'll also send around again the Bath comprehensive plan. I don't know if I'd send it to everybody. Carla had been looking at it
Yeah.
because it's very user friendly in terms of it's got like an executive summary where like someone might actually read it rather than
Yeah.
some 100 or 200 page document.
That's
It's got all
true.
the appendices and everything, but
Yeah,
and Emily from Lincoln County Regional Planning did check and, because it isn't exactly the format that the state
Yeah.
recommends.
yeah.
But the state has put their approval on it in terms of that's fine.
That is a
So-
really interesting comp plan.
Yeah.
It's
And I
short.
think that could be a good model for us to look at, and it would be nice to have one that's been done very recently
Yeah.
for us to actually go off of.
Great,
So
yeah.
I'll send that around again, but.
You wanna stay in this geographic area?
Yeah, but I also think just in terms of overall layout, it's a good one to look at for an example.
It's not very ponderous.
My brother lives in Denmark,
Oh,
and, which is rather rural and poor. And they have a historical society, which is incredibly active and well-funded by individuals there. And they just got a grant for $125,000 to do something or other, matching funds, and
That's so neat.
that's a small,
Look at their comprehensive plan online. It would be interesting, to sort of see what how they write their chapter.
Yeah, I'll send you a company that I was farting around the other night, and,
So to speak.
so, there's a town in Alaska that's like maybe a couple hundred people, but it used to be an old military base, and, it's actually, most of the town is in a skyscraper.
oh, I've heard of that town, yeah.
Yeah,
So it's sort of
and so,
selfish.
yeah,
The entire town is in the one building.
yeah.
Wow.
So anyways, I saw, I was on their website going around, and they had a comp plan, and I was like, oh, wow. And so anyways.
That's
I can
funny,
do that,
that would be fun. Do you think we could all fit in the Mason station? That's really neat.
powered by nuclear power.
Yeah. Okay, those,
All right.
we've got some steps to take.
Okay, great, and,
Appreciate everybody.
yeah, no, and I appreciate you guys meeting outside of this to get some thoughts down, so. All right, our next meeting is January 10th, and we'll make sure we've got more folks here. Hopefully there'll be less sickness going around too, 'cause
Yeah.
everybody's got something.
No, January 10th, okay. That's it.
I'm around the next 2 days.
All righty,
I'm gonna start calling these towns, to just get their NPRs from these towns, so that I can, that's what I was asking.
yeah,
And then you're away
that
for
sounds
Christmas.
No, we're here.
all right, so I'm gonna officially adjourn us at 7:06. Bye, Susan.
Bye, thank you.